All right, Mike Green, we're doing it, buddy. Long overdue.
Yeah, I'm super psyched.
Um, so many things that I want to talk about today with you. I want to talk about your dad. I want to talk about your involvement in Front Row Dads and how you've shown up in such a huge way, specifically in the pillar of vibrant health. I want to talk about your life as a kid, as a dad, being married. You have an epic marriage, which you've proudly stated, several times
Hmm.
over the years. And you've got some cool life transitions happening right now, which is also happening, we could say, later stage than some in our community. You've also put out there that, hey, I think I'm one of the older guys in the group. And I think that comes with a lot of wisdom. It comes with a lot of intelligence and years behind you that we can all learn from. So there's a lot to get into today, and I'm just really grateful that you made time because you don't have necessarily the lightest schedule of any human I
I
know
got a lot going on, but
by choice. By
yeah,
choice.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I have work-life balance, and this
yeah,
is this is definitely I would always make time for this.
yeah. And also, on a personal note, I want to thank you for just being there for me in a couple of times, a couple of very uh, I don't know how I would call these in a moments of crisis. You were
Yeah,
there. That one time, man, when I had done was it I did an NAD drip,
yeah,
right? And I came
yeah,
back and I was having some serious reaction to it.
yeah,
And it was wild to be in that moment where you understand having capable brothers around you where I think I said to Tatiana, call Mike Green.
yeah.
But to be able to do that, to have the friendship, have the relationship, to be the type of person on your side that would take the call. And again, you would live a very full life, but yet you had a moment to support me there. And you did. You were incredibly supportive. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's how I come to the Front Row Dads to give. I feel like I can be a trusted source of my vast like health information. But there's so many guys. I mean, I look at the Front Row Dads as a hive mind of valuable wisdom and knowledge. And it doesn't matter if it's your health, and there's a guy like me or Mike Gorman, or it's your finances or your mortgage or your business or your marriage. Somebody's been through it and can offer, at the very least, a word of support, an ear or a shoulder to lean on. But beyond that, a resource or a relationship or a connection to some or a book or something that's going to help solve that problem.
Yeah. It's so true. And the bigger that we become, the more capable men that join our community, the better that the better the options are around you for finding answers,
I mean,
which
I've
is really
never
cool.
had any lack of confidence, but having this group in my uh, back pocket gives me more confidence to try all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Well said. Mike, let's start the journey today by talking about your dad because when we prepped for this and I said, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" You almost didn't hesitate, not even for a second when you're like, "I want to talk about my dad."
Yeah.
And I love that because I don't think that's I know that's not the case for everybody. So, let's start with that, which is what are some of tell me one of your favorite stories with your dad.
I mean, so my dad, I hit the jackpot in dads, right? I've always known that. But being in Front Row Dads, it makes you realize how good I had it. I think I got two superpowers in life was my, just my gifts. One is my self-esteem, which I think came from my dad. The unconditional love and unconditional support for anything I wanted to try and encouragement. It just gives you that confidence in yourself. And the other is I was born with a very good memory. It's not as good as it used to be, but it got me through all the way through medical school at least. And so those are my two gifts. But my dad, Um, my dad was an interesting guy. You know, he taught me about work-life balance. He was a general contractor, and so he would do a job for 6 months and then, you know, make the money off the job and then not work for a long time and just support me with whatever I wanted to do. He coached my little league baseball team. You know, I grew up doing drum and bugle corps and marching band. So you travel around the summer, all summer. Well, for like 2 weeks out of the summer, he'd get in his car and just drive behind the buses and cook and just be there for whatever I was doing. Letting me live my being a supporting character in the story of my life rather than telling me what he wanted the story of my life to be. And that it just gives you just this confidence. You know, there's so many guys that are battling the skeletons in their closet of low self-esteem. And I just have sometimes I feel bad. I can't relate. I mean, I just have always felt like I could do anything. And that's because of my dad.
How do you think he helped support, build, craft self-esteem within you? Did he just model it? Did he keep saying, "You got this"? Like, what do you think are the ingredients there?
Um, well, first of all, one of the things that I never realized until Front Row Dads is that he broke generational patterns to be as good as he was. And I knew it, you know, for instance, when I remember being in sixth grade and he made me promise that we would always hug and kiss each other no matter how old or big I got. And he told me explicitly that he didn't remember hugging and kissing his dad ever. His dad was a workaholic and didn't have time for him. And so that's one of the things that he took from his childhood as a way of not to be a dad and made an intentional effort to break that by making sure we always showed affection and making sure that he was there for the things that I wanted to do. And so now he had self-esteem. I'm not sure where he got that. You know, he was a firstborn kind of overachiever. He kind of had a charmed childhood in a way, but not the father that I think he would have wanted. And so he became the father that he would have wanted. And I think self-esteem comes from just unconditional love and support. If you just, you know, show up for whatever your kids are doing and they have no doubt in their mind that they are loved, I think that's where that's the foundation of that self-confidence.
Mhm. What kind of kid were you like, Mike? Who were you 7 to 11? You know, I know you
Oh
said
my God. You
there's some
know,
band and music in there, but like, what was the spirit of Mike Green?
before the band and music, we grew up in South Florida and we had a boat. And so we would go fishing like every other weekend. And so I just had this zest for nature and a zest for life and the boat and nature and fishing just brought that out. I mean, we were snorkeling and fishing and diving all the time. And those are probably the best memories of my dad, despite, you know, along with the stuff where he followed me around, where I followed him around doing the things that he loved and grew up doing. You know, I don't know if you know this, I was born in the Bahamas. I have a
I did not
strange
know that.
foreign birth story like you. I was born in the Bahamas because my dad moved to the Bahamas and was the dock master at the marina in Freeport in Grand Bahama. This is a crazy story. I was born and lived on a houseboat because this houseboat was owned by Mamie Eisenhower's nephew. This is the story. And he was on the run for tax evasion and left it at the marina. And my dad just took it over so that he could take care of it. And this
Really?
houseboat was like vaulted ceilings, grand piano, bar in the front. And that became his house because the guy just left it there.
Jeez.
And he had like this is the funny part of my dad. Like before he was married, he had the best game ever. He would be in the houseboat and his best friend, this is in the mid 60s after Cuba closed down. All of like the entertainment and Vegas style stuff went to the Bahamas. And so there was all these celebrities and athletes and whatnot going through there and big shows. And his good friend was the maitre d' at this high-end dinner show. And so his friend would, as they were seating everybody, he would find the two prettiest single ladies and seat them at a table of four, and then call my dad and be like, all right, the fly is in the web. And him and his buddy would come over and he would introduce them and say, as if he didn't know them. He'd be like, is it okay? We're very full. Is it okay if we seat someone else with you? And of course, the one would be like, fine. And it was a great table. And then he'd be like, and your name is Mr. And he'd just introduce them and get it started. And so that was my dad's like game in the Bahamas.
How long were you guys there?
I don't remember much of it. We were only there till I was 3. And then
Okay.
the Bahamas got independence from England and kind of kicked all the expatriates out.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And so that's when we went to South Florida. But he was just funny like that, and he always had a game. He could tell a story. I mean, he was a much better storyteller than I am. But one of the things what's great. This is like this character of my dad is that when my parents are divorced, we lived in a little 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo in Fort Lauderdale. And I think for over a year, we all showered in my dad's bathroom because our bathtub was full of turtles and crawfish and fish. And like the tub was literally plugged and full like an aquarium for over a year. And so I don't know how many people's parents would let them get away with that. It was just crazy.
Uh,
We used to go take nets and drag the lakes and canals in the seaweed and all this stuff. We'd catch all this stuff and bring it home in a bucket and pour it in the bathtub.
do you ever remember, do you ever remember being afraid of your dad?
Yes.
It,
I was totally afraid of my dad.
Tell me about that because I was thinking this morning about Ocean and having respect for somebody where it feels like respect is like there's a healthy, like you'd have to unpack fear or define fear, but I don't want him to be afraid of me. I don't want him to, but I want him to be respectful.
Yeah.
So when but I think you have to really unpack the word fear because I think somebody would say, I think it's okay to have a healthy fear of like if you
Yeah.
disrespect somebody, what happens.
Yeah.
So what was your relationship like there with respecting your dad and with somebody that is so cool and lets you get away with some things? How does he hold the boundary then in that process?
He drew some hard lines that I couldn't stop crossing. One of the things was this I'll never forget this. He was a building contractor. And so in our neighborhood, it was very new when we were growing up. And so he was building a couple of the houses at any given moment. And there was a strict rule about not playing on the construction site because obviously it's dangerous. But all we wanted to do was go play on the construction site. Like,
Looks like the perfect place to play.
oh yeah, I mean, we'd go and like throw bottles against the walls and break them, and just kid stuff. And that was a hard line because he knew the danger. I mean, I remember one time we went to the place and there was a pool being built, and I saw my dad coming, and I knew I was in trouble, and we hid in between the walls of where the pool was being built,
Oh,
and
geez.
he couldn't see us, and that in itself I think is super dangerous. And he
Probably.
couldn't see us, but he knew when we knew we were there. And he comes in the place and he's like, I know you're here. You better beat me home. And then he just walked out. And we stuck out, and I saw him walking down the street with our dog. And I went around the whole other way and ran through the woods, and I beat him home. And oh my God, I was crying before anything even happened. And
Yeah, sure.
I probably got a belt like twice.
Yeah.
And that was one of them. And I remember I had the bruise. I mean, nowadays it would be ludicrous to think about hitting your kid with a belt and making a bruise. I remember that bruise to this day, and probably twice in my life that happened, and it was over that. In terms of fear, I just knew the madder my dad got, the quieter he talked and the less his mouth moved. It was like that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And he was a big man, and uh, he never wielded fear on me, but I knew about like stories he told about other people that he was capable of doing some damage. He told a story about a guy. My dad went by Mike, but his given name was Mayer, Maier. And he told a story about a guy who just made fun of him and called him Nightmare all the time. And he never did anything about it. He was a small kid, and he said that he met up with that guy at some other point, and the guy acted like it was no big deal. Hey, how are you? It's been a long time. And he decked him and walked out. And so it's little stories like that about, what happened when he was really had the rage that kept me kind of in check and knowing his capabilities without doing them to me. And the way he talked about, being wronged by people for whatever reason, that he wasn't going to take any shit from anybody, right? Made me realize that I better not give him any shit in my way.
Where do you see yourself in raising your kids? It's your dad. Where do
Yeah.
you say, man, I've become my dad?
Well,
That's making an assumption that you do.
yeah, yeah, I've never like, I do wield fear a little bit. Uh, but I've never spanked my kids even. I don't even know that I believe in spanking per se. Now the other side of that is I lucked out. I've got really great kids. My son is very sensitive. So, ever since he was little, if I raised my voice, just his name, if I'm like Miles, you can just see it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have to be careful not to overdo it with him because he's very sensitive.
Mhm.
The other side of that is I try to be a fun dad with my kids, that's it's never ending dad jokes, never ending plays on words. I just like it because it keeps my mind working, but I also think it makes their mind work when you play with words. So I play with words all the time, and my dad was a little bit like that. I don't know if I'd let my kids have a bathtub full of fish, but I might. See, that's the thing. The moms wouldn't go for that.
Yeah.
That's what we got by not having my mom around.
I swore I would never be the guy in the car driving that would be like, that commenting constantly about cars in front of me or what other people have done. And I find myself making comments now, and I'm like, I've literally become my dad. But when I was a kid, I'd be like, that's the silliest thing. Like he's talking to somebody that can't hear him. He's putting all
Yeah,
this energy out there. There's no need for that. But
yeah,
yeah, I find that's a little way I've become my dad.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think I've become my dad in spirit
Hmm.
more than specific action.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I got the I'll give you something to cry about. I
Yeah.
would never even think of saying that to my kids.
Yeah.
I when I say something, it's like joking. I'd be like, I'm going to give you a knuckle sandwich, and they're like, ha ha ha. They don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
Um, when you think about values that you've learned from your dad, you think about some of your greatest life lessons. Was there any moment that you can recall where he pulled you aside and really taught you something? He's like, let me teach you how the world works. Um, and or is that most of that done by just how he was? He didn't ever, you don't have those moments where he pulled you aside and said, this is the key to life, but he just showed you daily.
yeah.
What was more prevalent?
There was a lot of modeling, and you probably know I believe in modeling. I
Yeah.
think the lessons are caught and not taught. But there's a couple times. One thing I remember, which seemed stupid to me at the time, that he told me that I've really learned is a valuable foundation. Is he told me, he said, everybody is not gonna like you, and that's okay. He's, maybe even said 50% of people are not gonna like you, and that's okay. Now, I don't know that that's true. I still feel like I like to be liked, but the freedom to know that no matter what you do, there's just a certain amount of people that you're not going to please,
For sure.
and not becoming a pleaser is I think a very important value that I see all too often. That people are trying to please everybody else, but just the way he said that everyone's not going to like you and it's okay, I think was valuable. I had no clue about it at the time. I'm like, why is he telling me this? So what? I think everybody likes me.
Yeah.
But it was a thing that he made a point of telling me, and that was his way of letting me know that you don't have to please everybody.
Yeah. If you were gonna write a book about your dad, are there any other stories that you can think of that you would want to make sure to include in that book that we haven't talked about?
Um, God, I mean, he just had stories from before we were born that were just hilarious, like the one with the houseboat. Um, I don't know. It was more about just,
Let me ask you a question about that, by the way. On that note, do you think, Mike, that it is that helped shape who you think you are? Like what I hear when you say that he was telling stories even about his life or what happened before you were conscious enough to process it all. Do you think those stories helped shape who you are? I mean, maybe that's even silly to say. Like, of course they did, but
yeah.
to what extent?
I mean, one of the other values I learned from him, like we talked about before, is work-life balance, right? I learned to sculpt my life in a way that you're making sure that you're not a workaholic.
Yeah.
Now that worked to his detriment sometimes, where he was running to borrow money from his mom. I remember that. But at the same time, he was able to participate in all my activities, because of that work-life balance. And the stories of him having fun throughout his youth put that emphasis on don't forget to have fun, you know.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
do you,
it's
so
not all that serious.
he was not obsessed with ending with a lot of money in the bank. That was not the goal.
No.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good strategy?
That's not my strategy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do both, right?
Yeah.
Uh, he, I mean, he passed too young, right? He died at 64. One of his big regrets. Now, my grandmother had a lot of money, and so he benefited from that. And I think one of his biggest regrets was that at the end of her life, they were a little bit estranged. And because of that, and this is like one of those weird family drama things, his sister, who they were estranged, had the will rewritten and got everything.
Mm.
And he didn't care about the money, but one of his regrets was that, I just let my pride and stubbornness get in the way of what really could have been passed on to his kids,
Hmm.
and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so, that I think is one of his regrets in life. Was and a lesson that I learned about, the money just doesn't matter that much. And he was never trying to die with a lot of money in the bank, maybe because he thought maybe he was going to have the money from his mom, and then it didn't work out. But ultimately, he lived a very simple life, and that's the way he liked it.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is that I think there's something to the fact that, when you put the story together and you say, hey, he made some money and then he took some time off and he really spent a lot of time with you. If you had all of your focus on making sure there was always a lot of money in the bank, it's possible you miss those moments. Now, you can have both. You can have a lot of money in the bank all the way through and at the end and spend a lot of time with your kids. I have friends that are doing that. Um, but maybe if it's like if there's a choice, like if you had to choose, I just don't think it's a bad idea to take some time off and die with less.
I'm with you. I mean, I made a
No.
choice a while ago that I'm not gonna like be the guy that like work, 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 work until someday. Then when you can have all your money and retire and do
Yeah.
everything, you got to sprinkle it in. I certainly could have made a lot more money than I've made if I did it, but by my dad's standards, I've made a ton of money, you
Yeah.
know, and I mean by some guys' standards, I've made zero, but by
Yeah.
my dad's standards, I have a lot more money in the bank that he would, and at the same time, I've spent a lot of time with my kids, and this is one of the things that we talked about in the prep. Having my kids later in life has made a lot of things valuable for me, right? I already had a certain level of income. I already had a certain understanding of the world. Probably the biggest thing is that I watched all my friends have their kids. Like when I had my kids, my friends' kids were in high school older.
You were 45, right?
46 when I had my
Yeah.
first. And then it just every one of them was like it goes so fast. And I had already watched it. And so I had the real benefit of having kids later is you get to see that. You get to be more intentional because you're not struggling to figure out the world so much for yourself. And it allowed me to find great joy in moments that probably would have pissed me off when I was 30, right?
Yeah.
Like when my kids wake up in the middle of the night after they pee the bed for the third time, I'd have been like, oh God, again. And now because I have the perspective of they only get these moments for a short amount of time, I'm like, come here, let's go clean it up.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
that perspective of watching my friends, more than my dad, but of being older and watching my friends, I think is going to benefit my kids a lot. I'm
Yeah.
a lot more chill. I'm a lot less concerned about how my kids reflect on me, um, and a lot more understanding and just enjoy the moments that, like I said, would have probably annoyed me.
What does it look like for you now to juggle your calendar, your priorities? How do you put food on the table, pursue passions, still spend time with your kids, still have an amazing marriage? Talk to me about time.
Well, I'm an ER doctor. I don't know if everybody knows that. And I have been fortunate to, I call it sculpting my life. I've sculpted my life in such a way that I work in an ER that's rural. And so I work 48-hour shifts. And so I do that I usually nowadays I'll do two 48s and two 24s in a month. And so basically I'm working 6 days a month. The day that I come back, I can be a little out of it because I get some sleep deprivation. And so that's the foundation of my calendar is, well, let me back up. When I give the days that I'm available, that's the foundation of my calendar. So I'm able to look at my calendar and see what's important, whether it's a family trip or a birthday or a front row dad retreat or another thing that, like I used to be in the Drum and Bugle Corps. So I go to the nationals every year. And so I look at those things in advance, and those are my big blocks that I block out the time. Then my ER schedule comes out, usually, hopefully based around that. Hopefully they can accommodate that. And they, 99% of the time they do. Then beyond that, my side hustle gets plugged in, which I have a side hustle doing aesthetics, which is basically Botox and fillers and the facial injections. So that gets plugged in. I homeschool my kids because I'm homeschooling my kids, and I was doing the lion's share of curating the curriculum and whatnot. I won't start my side hustle till 11:30. So that means I do my morning routine and I hang out with my kids at least until 11. And Nanny gets here at 11 and then I go in. And so that the basics around how I manage my calendar, if there's a concert I want to see, I put that on the block before my ER goes in. And, what I haven't been good about is we decided we're going to do date nights twice a month, and we haven't been good about sticking to that. But now that my wife is retired, uh, those things are a lot easier. We're not beholden to her calendar
Yeah.
so much. And so
And if
that's
somebody's
how
not
I,
watching this, they might have heard it, by the way, but you just smiled ear to ear saying that. I want to get to that part. I want to talk about marriage in a moment.
yeah.
But I have a quick question about the schedule. Is that unique, by the way, to work? You said I work 6 days a month as an ER doc. Is that normal? I have this vision of doctors working 90 hours a week every week,
Yeah.
without a vacation type of deal. But that feels very reasonable. Is that seniority? Is that just you work with a great
No, no, it's seeking what I want, basically. The thing about emergency medicine is, and one of the reason I chose is one of the reason I chose is variety, right?
Mhm.
It's you get to see a little bit of everything, and I'm a seven. I want the buffet. I want the buffet of medicine. And so the variety is great. But the fact that when you're there, you're on, and when you're gone, you're off, is one of the beauties of emergency medicine.
Yeah.
Now that plays out in different ways. Like when I was working in the city of Chicago, you do, let's say 12/12s, they call it, so you're working 12 days a month, 12-hour shifts. And sometimes you work 8-hour shifts. Maybe you'll do 16/8s, but it's something like that in emergency medicine where the hours in your shift add up to whatever it is. Sometimes, and so sometimes you're working 180 hours in the month, Sometimes in mine, I'm working 140 something hours in the month. And it just gets uh, divided up in that way for emergency medicine. So it's one of the great things about emergency medicine is when you're off, nobody calls you.
Yeah. That's really cool. Love
And
that.
so I've just happened to find a rural job. And because it's rural, I can sleep, let's say 3 to 8 hours a night while I'm there, which allows me to do that. Like if I was up all night every night, you can't do 48. And even now, as I get older, the sleep deprivation that comes from only sleeping 4 hours takes a larger toll. And so that's why I'm trying to move more into a health coaching, functional medicine, wellness approach and see if I can make that work. And that's on the horizon for me. Part of what I'm doing for the Front Row Dads is being able to give back and sort of hone my skills that way and being a health coach.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. And lots of people, you've been extremely helpful in the community. We have some very talented guys, and you're always one of the people when somebody says, who should we ask? And it's like Mike Green, and then the other superstars that we have in the community. But it's
Dude,
so nice. And
I
you,
was
I
I
was
was
going to bring
so
this up later,
honored.
by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
I was so honored to be asked, to be the pillar partner. And I don't
I
know,
was going to go there. Yeah.
you probably know this, but man, it was at a time when I had so much going on, right? I'm trying to start a new start of my practice. I'm trying to build the current side hustle. I'm working in the ER. I was buying a house and doing I call it the financial colonoscopy, the underwriting process of the mortgage.
Yeah.
I was going through that in spades. And then you guys asked me, you're like, can you be our pillow partner? I'm like, and my wife,
Could
Sarah was
there
like,
be a
are
better
you
time?
crazy? Sarah's like, are you crazy? You're going to do this? I'm like, I can't not do this. I'm like, these are my
Yeah.
guys. And, the whole reason I started Medical Monday, which, which I stole from Kasim because he had the business call. And I'm like, I just want to be a trusted resource for the Front Row Dads. I don't know everything, but I want them to know I don't have an agenda and I will tell them my honest opinion about whatever they bring. And I've got a lot of experience in, I sort of view with my friends and with Front Row Dads as a physician, my part of my job is to lend credibility to the things that are more functional medicine. I was doing functional medicine before it was named functional medicine in a way, but to lend my MD credibility to the things that most people's doctors are not going to tell them and don't know
Right.
anything about. And so I wanted to be that trusted resource. And I said, I'm going to just copy Qasim. I'm going to make the same kind of spreadsheet. I'm going to have a medical Monday. And I picked Gorman, who is completely different point of view. I wanted a panel. And so I picked Nate and Mike Gorman for a completely different point of view because I don't have all the answers. And it's really worked out great. I just hope that we're a good trusted resource for our community to be able to just come in and, drop a question.
Yeah, you have been, and it's awesome. So thank you for that, man. And just to unpack that a little bit for anybody who might be newer to the show. So in Front Row Dads, we have 6 pillars, and one of those pillars is health. And throughout the year, 6 of our members help tackle the idea of like, if there's 8 weeks and we're going to take a deep dive into this subject matter, what topics do we cover? What questions do people want answered? What guests, experts can we bring into the fold? Some of those experts are in our group. Sometimes we go outside of the group, but how do we be a resource to our men on the most valuable subjects in these 6 pillars? So parenting, marriage, health, wealth, business, etc. So yeah, thank you for that, man.
Well, and
That's
I
really
will tell
cool.
you that I just loved seeing behind the curtain of how that stuff gets produced and how great your team is. I had no idea how it was going to work. But the team works so well. And I really, I just want to say you've done a great job of trusting all your people to do their thing, including me, right? They chose
Yeah.
me and my opinions really mattered. The things that I thought were important for kind of having my finger on the pulse of the Front Row Dads were what played out in the pillar,
Yeah.
and so I love the way you approach your team to really focus on everyone's strengths, and it's really ends up being a well-oiled machine that way. And I was very honored to play that role.
Team's doing a great job. I'm very, very excited about the direction that things are moving in. And It's kind of cool. Front Row Dads is now it's a 7-figure business with, 11 people on the team. Two of those are full time. The rest are contracted to do things, within the organization. But it's awesome. It's really, really cool, and things are moving in the right direction. So thrilled, and thank you again for doing that, man. What were some of your big takeaways, by the way, from that time? What did you learn, or what would you say were the highlights that people listening might appreciate getting the golden nugget?
I mean, I just like the way we approached the deep dives. Well, you know, you guys wanted someone different, and then I was like, I want to get Ben Greenfield. I've been following him for a long time, and I
Mhm.
saw him speak at another thing, and he comes with a Ben Greenfield attitude for sure, but he also comes with a stack of Ben Greenfield knowledge. And the fact that you guys got him and the stuff that he laid out in our summit, I thought that was great. I mean, not only could he talk about the things that we kind of wanted for health, but the biggest nugget that everyone got from that was how he runs his life, right?
Yeah, his family, right? Like
His
how his
family.
parenting strategies. Yeah.
I love that you asked him that question. I mean, I thought it was so great in that moment that you could ask the health guru anything you want, and you asked him a question that came from empathy, right? You got into his life and said, "Well, you're a busy guy and you're this and you got all this going on. How do you do it?" And that set off
Hmm.
the domino of some of the biggest nuggets that everybody got from him. Like, this is a big health successful empire of health guy, and it got down to brass tacks about how he works with his family. That was such a crystalline Front Row Dads family men with a business moment.
Yeah. And quick plug for membership in case anybody who, first of all, is a member and didn't catch that. There is a recording in our vault. But for anybody who's listening to this, who's thinking about becoming a member, what we're describing is the value of being in this community as a member, which is that you get access to these live calls with these incredible people, you can ask questions, you can talk with other men about it, and then you have access to all these interviews and recordings as needed. And then we have these chat threads that you can post a question and get answers. So it's a resource is what it is. It's brotherhood and resources so that you can get results. That's essentially the purpose of any community, including
Yeah.
ours.
And
Yeah.
one of the other great things, the vault, right? The resources, the guys, the brotherhood community. But one of the things that has helped me the most, I think, is the accountability.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Having someone to hold you accountable. Or even if you put it out there to the group, you got to hold yourself accountable. We
yeah.
have all these threads like the cold plunge thread and the fasting thread and whatever it is. And you gotta be like, well, I've got to be on the thread. I better do my cold plunge,
Yeah.
And so that level of
Yeah, you're right.
rising tide helps lift all the boats.
So true. Yeah, big time. Mike, let's talk about marriage. I want to make sure that we leave some time for this because you do have such an epic marriage. I've been privileged to meet your wife. I think I met her at Seth Daly's house.
You
Seth
did.
being
Yeah.
such a great host here in Austin to open up his beautiful home, bring people together. It was awesome to spend some time with both of you. And I know that you've mentioned like it's your heart goes out to some guys when you hear them, the struggles they go through in their marriages. And I've been very open about the struggles I've gone through in my marriage. And oftentimes you'll say, man, it's really interesting to hear these challenges. And it helps me appreciate the fact that my marriage is as great as it is. I think that's
Solid.
awesome too. I think that's really cool. Sometimes you need to know what else is out there and what other people are facing to really appreciate your current situation. Why is your marriage so great?
Um, you know, I, Look, there's a couple of things. I think you got to find Mrs. Right, but you've got to be Mr. Right. And being later to the marriage game and having the experiences of my life and other relationships have helped me be better. And I don't,
When did you find each other?
I was in 2005, so I
Okay.
was 36,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Had been in some long-term relationships, never had lived with anybody. I mean, I'll never forget this moment. Sarah and I were dating for a while, and then she was spending more time at my house. You know how that goes. And she looked up and she's like, God, I haven't been to my apartment in 2 weeks. And I was like, wow. I'm like, that was like any other relationship in the past. I
Yeah.
would not have lasted 2 weeks. I've been like, you need to go to your apartment. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And so that was a moment where I knew that this was something special that because it was sort of easier, you
Yeah.
know. I wasn't craving my freedom anymore. And I don't know if that's a function of age or whatever. I think it's just that I think we're just a very good fit. And so I think it's partly because I waited a long time, partly because I waited to find a good person. Neither of one of us was looking to get married when we met. Um, and it just sort of developed organically into just an amazing relationship. Um, I think there's always work to be done. I think we could always do more work. But it's hard to do more work when like I always say this, like you're like 85 or 90% good. Do you want to do the hard work to get another 5%? I don't know, you know. But I think we communicate with each other very well. We're mostly on the same page about things, and when we're not, you know, we have a good way of kind of sorting it out and letting the other person be their own person. I think that we had some trials in when we were dating. There were some things where we both stepped out of line in ways, and the way we recovered from those things, I think, made us stronger into understanding, uh, well, let me back up. One of the things I learned from another relationship was not to try to be the person they want, I think they want, and to
Mm.
be myself. And so a couple of our trials and tribulations ended up with like, you know what? This is who I am. If it's a deal breaker, then the deal is broken. If it's not a deal breaker, then let's go. And
Yeah.
so there was moments like that that
Do you remember examples?
yes, I don't know if I'm willing to share
Yeah.
them.
I mean, look, I have to push
I'll
a little
share one.
bit.
I'll share one
Okay.
good one,
Yeah.
right? We were dating, and a friend of mine had gotten unengaged from a girl that he was with for like 10 years or something. And so he didn't know what it was like to go to a bar and go out and whatnot. And I'm like, I'll be your wingman. Let's go. Let's go out. Right. I got no skin in the game. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to hang with you and just be, so you don't like an awkward guy standing there alone. And Sarah did not like that one bit. And this is
Oh,
early in the relationship, right? And so
sure.
um, I don't think, trust takes a while to earn when you don't know somebody.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that she trusted me to do whatever I said I was going to do, which was not, I'm not going
That
out
makes
there.
sense. Yeah.
I'm not going to meeting. Right. It makes total sense. But I remember being on the phone with her while I was out and her expressing her extreme displeasure in the fact that I was doing this. And I was like, you know what? You're going to have to trust me. I'm not doing anything. I'm not crossing any boundaries. I'm just hanging with my friend who's having a hard time right now. And that was the end of that. And then we moved on and it was okay. I
Yeah.
think that there was a little trust by fire that she needed to have that let her know and let her know that I'm going to be who I am, and I think that
I
was
think there's a
important.
great lesson in that because it goes back to what your dad taught you. You said earlier in the show about people pleasing, and uh, I, I think that this work in what are my needs? How do I honor myself? How can I be respectful to you and honor myself? How do I communicate my boundary? Communicate what does it look like for Mike Green to be fully expressed as a human? And then what are you willing to put on the line at the risk of, let's say, losing your partner to become the person and to be the person that you feel most deeply inside that you are? I don't know what those lines are for people, of course, because they have to figure them out for themselves. But I love that strength of like, what it sounds to me is like, hey, I love you. This is important to me. I'm going to do this. And it's so important to me that I would put our relationship at risk because to draw this line in the sand and say, I'm not going to not go out with my friends, or I'm not going to not be supportive of somebody That's a hard thing to do. It's a scary thing to do. And I think I'm just learning how to do it at the best level I've ever done it at 49 years old.
I can tell by the scruff on your face.
Yeah, 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 dude. I'm just learning to do this.
Yeah.
And I think I have done it probably in my life. There have been examples of it, but there's more examples of me caving, people pleasing, putting my own needs aside for other people. There's more examples of that.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that from another relationship. And what's funny is that I still love that girl. She's married to someone else. We're friends for, I don't know, almost 40 years now. At some point, there was a big rift and there was anger and years of, we had circles of friends that were the same and we would bump into each other and it was like always this awkward weirdness and the friends were awkwardly weird. It was strange. But then we came back to a place where we could talk about it all. I know her husband, he's an amazing guy. And when I talked to her about it, I'm like, you know what I learned is not to try to be what you wanted me to be. She's like, oh my God, that's what I learned too.
Yeah.
We were there, we were both trying to be what we thought the other one wanted us to be, and it just wasn't working.
Which makes sense in a
Yeah.
way because you're like, hey, I'm growing, I'm adapting, I'm changing. I don't even really know who I am. So I'm going to try this on.
Yeah.
If I do this thing and you love me, that feels good. Like I
Yeah.
love love. So it makes tons of sense why we do it and how we end up in those places. And I actually think that you can't skip that step. There needs to be a part of you that, because how would you know if you like being this way or that way without trying them on, maybe, to see what personality really fits for you. And like, if I take this action, does that align with my deepest self? I don't know. Let me try it. And it's such a great experiment.
Well, and the other thing is, I don't know, there's the whole point that you're not really trying to align with your deepest self when you're trying to be in a relationship at the young ages, right? When you're 20s and stuff. You're not thinking about aligning with your
I'm
deepest
not
self.
trying to align with my deepest self. I'm trying to have sex.
Yes.
That's
Right. So you'll be whatever you think they want.
right. And I also try to have compassion for myself, by the way, of like being a primal being, who is literally programmed to procreate. I try to remind
Totally.
myself that that was a normal part of the evolution. I can have some shame around that. I do have shame around that, but I attempt to be compassionate for myself,
Yeah.
for this very flexible and fluid person who is trying to get his needs met.
So anyway, getting back to your whole point about my marriage, one of the other things, I just had to evolve to the point where I could be a better husband. This is going to sound crazy, but I used to watch a lot of Oprah. Oprah developed my empathy because she shows other people in these hard situations and shows, she did all the
Mm.
relationship books and all that stuff. And I've always been the kind of person who wanted to learn from other people's problems so that I could avoid them. And so I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of reading around becoming the better, becoming Mr. Right rather than looking for Mrs. Right, right?
Yeah.
Like trying to
Yeah.
do that evolution, like a lot of front row dads do. And I just happened to get married after I had done a lot of that already. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like, one of your best friends, met his wife at 18.
Yeah.
I don't know how you navigate that.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I met that girl when I was 18 and I could not navigate that, right?
Yeah.
So that's hard to navigate. And so on some way, I think it's easier when you start later. Both of you are more evolved, both of you are more centered. Uh, and it makes it easier, I think, to have such a strong marriage. I hate to say that as sort of like a cop out that we just got married late, but I do think there's a role for that.
Mm. Let's talk about the future for a minute, Mike, and where things are going for you. Like cast a vision, if you will, of where you'd like to see you and your family in the future. 10, 20, 30 years. It really doesn't matter the timeline, but what pulls you forward? What visions do you have?
I don't know that I want to go 10, 20, 30 years. I want to stay in the moment and I want to watch the journey
Mm,
more than that 10, 20 years down the road thing. And I just, you know this, that My wife just retired from her job for 22 years. We're 1 month into that, and I just think it's gonna be so valuable to have her integral in the day to day of our life. I also just got a vacation home, which I hope to retire to, but that the retire to is the long-term goal. But in the meantime, it's such a win because we're gonna be go down there, we're gonna go fishing, we're gonna spend time together, and I'm just really looking forward to the experiences that our family is going to have together as a group. Right now, my kids are 9 and 11. So for the next 6 or 8 years, I'm just really looking forward to making these family experiences, whether it's, where I've got the Grand Canyon on my horizon somewhere. I haven't worked out all the logistics. I haven't even started working out the logistics. So like that, I want to do a national park. I want to do a lot of fishing. We try to make birthdays a very a great family experience. Like we just went to the water park, stayed in the hotel with the whole family for my son's birthday, and we all just loved it. And it's just spending that family time together through these little experiences, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm not looking for a chunk of money. I'm not looking for sit on the beach in 20 years. I'm looking for the journey of all the experiences we're going to have on the way.
Mm, I love that, man. That's cool. Well, I'm excited that I get a chance to witness some of those moments for you in the months ahead.
And for
Yeah,
any
and
of you
I
front row
use that term
dads,
months ahead specifically.
for any of you front row dads out there, we're going to have family camp week at some point.
Dude, I was journaling,
I want to
thought about
do it.
you. I thought I was journaling this idea of what if we had an event, maybe it's even around Father's Day every year. And what if we just picked a hotel? And what if we just said, look, there's going to be we have three families that are going. If there's a fourth, wonderful. If there's a fifth, even better.
I'm
But
in.
we're just going to take over this hotel, and we'll run into each other at the pool. It doesn't have to be even
No,
highly
no
organized. It could
script. Right. No
no
script.
script. It could just be let's all get in the same proximity and let things happen naturally. Kids will
I'm
find
in.
other kids. I can see a kid meeting another kid coming up and go, and I'm like, who are you? Who's your
Dude,
dad? Who's your mom? And that's how I
I'm
meet
in.
people.
I'm in.
Let the kids do the networking.
It's just, you know what? That's so brilliant. I can't believe I'd never thought of it. Father's Day for the front row dads.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Father's Day
Yeah.
weekend. That's perfect.
Yeah. It could be really
All
cool.
right, I'm in
Everybody's
for next
out.
year. I'll put it on my calendar for next year.
Dude, I love it. I think it feels like it's coming together naturally. Yeah, it
Oh
feels like
yeah.
it's coming together naturally. Yeah, I love this, Mike. And I really love, again, having you in the community because you bring so much and you do lead with what you can contribute. And I think that's why so many men are raving fans of yours because you don't show up with your hand out constantly trying to take, which is fine to receive. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is a wonderful gesture to lead with a gift and to lead with a contribution. And what can you bring to any community? And if everybody's leading with a contribution, then there's tons of people receiving
Oh
because
yeah, I'm
that's
receiving, no
by
doubt.
its very nature, right? So,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
what can you go back for a moment and let's talk about why you said yes to Front Row Dads in the beginning? What has this community meant to you? And what would you tell somebody that's thinking about Front Row Dads in their life?
I wish I knew how I found the podcast. And it's full circle, right? I'm on the podcast now. I
Yeah.
wish I knew how I found this. I can't figure it out. I've racked my brain. Anyway, but I found the podcast and I listened to uh what you had to say. Just the ethos and the family men with a business and the whole idea it just made me think of my dad, right? And being a better dad. And I would get away from the podcast for a while and then listen to it again. And you'd say something or have a guest on. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's speaking my language. And finally, it got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to have to join to put my money into this organization, which is speaking my language, right? Because I need to support the things that I believe in the world. And so that's what I did. It was actually my birthday present for myself 3 years ago in May. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to spend my money on the front row dads and support them. And this is my thing. And so I was in at the summit level, um, getting all these great things about the summit. And then we had that moment like during COVID where I felt like, you know, I felt stifled as a physician where I couldn't speak my mind about things and about the way that I felt. There was, I've never been one to feel traumatized. My parents got divorced, whatever. I've never felt traumatized. Now that I look back on the potential to lose my job, the potential to lose my medical license, the potential to lose my board certification were all real possibilities if I would have speak out loud about the way that I felt about the things that were happening in COVID that I didn't agree with. Um, and because I was in Front Row Dads, we have this Telegram thread, and I felt like, you know what, it was just welling up. I've got to be able to talk about this stuff. And that was the place that I thought was a safe space to talk about. And so I started saying, look, I don't think this, and I don't believe that, and masks don't work. And, different things that were way against the narrative in 2021. Um, and some of the other front row dads were pushing back against, oh, you don't think this, and what do you think about that? And I'm like, why not this? And I made it clear that I couldn't say this out loud, and this was confidential. And you called me up, and you're like, dude, I know this is confidential, but I just want to tell you, if things like your livelihood and your license are at stake, just be careful. Anybody can screenshot anything and whatnot. And I was like, you know what? This is my community. If I can't speak my mind here, where can I speak my mind? And if that's the risk I'm going to take here, then it's not my community. But ultimately, it was my community because I can speak my mind here. And, one of the things I love about the front row dads is that looking at life through the lens of being a better dad strips away how much money you make, strips away what your religion is, strips away what your politics is, and lets you speak freely, knowing that our goal is to be a better dad. And that is why I love this community so much. And that was my take. And then that's when you called me up and you're like, dude, I want a guy like you that's willing to speak your mind in the VIP, and here we are.
Yeah. What a journey. And I'm so grateful for you and this community of speaking their mind. I think we've done that really well all the way through since the beginning. And free speech, being able to say what you want in this community, it's built into our ethos. It's in writing. We have a yes and culture. So yes, I hear you, and here are my thoughts. We don't all need to agree with each other. We shouldn't all agree with each other.
Yeah.
But man, you should be able to say what you think. And I remember a couple of distinct moments throughout the journey of Front Row Dads where this has been called to attention in a beautiful way. I remember one person had posted something about, the gender topic, right? Or the LBGTQ plus community. And then several people chimed in with their thoughts, and anybody could say whatever they felt, and they didn't need to censor themselves. And there's not a cancel culture in Front Row Dads. And some other member just said, "This conversation is so healthy. I wish that it could happen everywhere, but it feels like the only place I'm seeing this version of a healthy conversation of yes, I hear you, and here's my thought, is in Front Row Dads." Such a level of respect and also courage to be able to say what you need to say. I was listening to an interview this morning, and this was the topic about how we went through this season. The topic was actually like comedy movies, and how if you look back to the 90s, some of the greatest movies were the ones where it is the edgiest. And then we got into this cancel culture, and everybody was afraid to say anything, and it just it stifles the conversation in such a way. I think we're coming out of that a little bit right now. It feels like we are. I hope we are. And I feel like in Front Row Dads, we're committed to keeping that always open. Say what you want, say it with love and respect, of course, and have a yes and culture.
Yeah. No, I love that, but I think it comes from what I said, people show up without an agenda.
Yeah.
The only agenda is to be a better dad.
Yeah.
And that combined with your example of vulnerability from the beginning has allowed people to be vulnerable and not have the fear of saying something, whether it's something that they're afraid of or something that they don't want to hurt anyone else's feelings. You know, people, everybody knows you come to the community with love, which allows you to be vulnerable
Yeah.
in saying things that you wouldn't say other places, whether you're concerned about, you know, in other places you'd be concerned about uh, uh, making someone angry because you disagree with them, or if you're concerned about stuff that you're just devastated by. You know, guys say stuff, and this is a culture where you can say what's on your heart or on your mind that you wouldn't say in other places.
Yeah. Mike, thank you, brother, for being a great front row dad, for being a great family man for your crew. Thanks for being a leader in your community. Just a lot of love and appreciation for you. And
Same.
I love that you have so much passion around this family camp concept. It's really, really cool. Just it's like your heart on display, the fact that you want to make that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
And you have like created some momentum there because after the retreat in the Keys, you got some people together, which was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
And I love to see it happening. And the one thing I want to say about that is I do appreciate what it means to be an elder in a community. And I don't think elder always has to do with age. I think the way I see elder is like there is an elder wisdom. There is somebody who's traveled down the road. There is somebody who's willing to take this energy of, hey, I'm going to just hold out my arms, scoop some people up, bring them together. That's what an elder does. You know, it's like I am no longer just focused on me. I'm no longer just focused on building my ego, managing my ego. What's mine? How do I test myself constantly, morning until night? How fast can I run? How fast can I jump? Right? How strong am I? We evolve into a person where we're like, let me help you test your strength. Let me witness your kids and see what they're capable of. Let's get your kids and my kids together. And this elder kind of just scoops people up and brings them together and holds space in a community, right?
Yeah.
They have a presence and an energy. We need that in front row dads, but we also need people at every stage. We need guys that are just coming in, brand new married, brand new kids. We need guys in like year one of life. And we need guys that have kids towards the end of their kid journey, moving towards 18, past 18. We need those men, and both should be helping each other, right? The older guys should be mentoring in ways and saying, here's what's coming for the younger guys. And the younger guys are challenging the older guys to stay young, stay in it, stay playful, right? The younger guys are pulling these older men back into purpose, back into an
Uh-oh.
involvement. And then you have a great community, Jizz. That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, this is a funny story. The first retreat I went to, I looked around the room and I was trying to figure out, you know, who, and I realized I was the oldest guy at the first retreat I went to. And there's some guys that are all gray and whatnot, and I'm thinking, I've got to be younger than that guy. And I'm, you know, no. And I tell you, it was like, I don't know, I was like, oh God. I felt old for a minute. But since then, I'm like, screw that, man. I'm 57 now. I'm gonna show you what 60 can be. I'm gonna be a badass 60. And
Yeah,
so I
totally.
want to be, and that so that young guys are doing exactly what you said and challenging me to stay young. And by the same, you know, it's a push-pull because I'm gonna be a badass 60 so they can be like, man, I gotta be like that when I'm 60,
Yes,
you know?
yes, dude, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, Mike, thank you, brother. Great conversation today. Anything else that you want to say to the guys before we go?
I just love this group. I just love our community. I mean, as much as you can have a community spread all over the world, this is it. And I just look forward to every time we can get together, whether it's on a Zoom call or especially in person. I love the culture that we've created. And you know, there's almost nothing that I wouldn't do for these guys. And you know, I'm getting the text every day. What about this? What about that? And I'm sending them out like, help me with this, help me with that. And I mean, I found my tribe.
Mhm.
I'm,
Cool, man.
and I'm very grateful for you once again. I don't know if I'm the first one that said this, but I like to think that I am the first one that said Front Row Dads is changing the world.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you, brother. I feel that. All right, guys. Well, if you've heard us chat about this community, I think you got a good dose of what this is all about. So if you are in Front Row Dads, I want to say thank you. Keep leaning in, get to your next event, get to your, whether it's online or in person, join a band, um, show up, step up, speak up. And if you're thinking about Front Row Dads, then go to the website, frontrowdads.com, check it out. Send us a message if you need anything. You can always reach out to our team, support at frontrowdads.com, for anything that you've got questions on. And we're running these info sessions lately where myself or someone on the team will jump on the line for about an hour. We'll unpack what Front Row Dads is. We'll tell you all about it. And then we'll answer any questions you've got. And if it's a good fit, lean in. If it's not, move on. It's that simple. So those are happening roughly once a month. You could see that on the website under the Join the Brotherhood tab. You can get more information there. That's it, fellas. Have a great day, week, month, and go spend some time with your family. Cheers.